The ongoing war between the United States of America and Iran, which has drawn Israel into the conflict, is no longer a secret. A lot of people are actually aware, and the devastation that is presently being caused as a result of this war. But what most people fail to put into consideration the economical impact it will have on the third world countries, especially Nigeria. And we all know that Iran is a major supplier of crude oil in the global market. As this war rages on, the supply of crude oil to the global market will be greatly affected. So based on that, Heavy Manuel has come up with an in-depth and a critical analysis of the impact it's going to have on the economy of Nigeria and other countries at large. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel. So let's go.
Steve, thank you so much. A little bit of context because some people who are watching us this morning might not actually understand the Iranian and U.S. conflicts that has drawn in Israel over the years. So a little bit of context so the audience will understand where we're coming from. So in 1951, the Prime Minister of Iran then, Mohammed Hadessa, had nationalize the Anglo-Iranian oil company, and it angered the UK government then, and the UK government worked with the US government. So, the UK, the foreign arm of the UK intelligence is MI6. The local arm is MI5, just like you have the NIA and DSS in Nigeria. And the MI6 worked with the CIA to overthrow Mohammed, the prime minister, in 1951. Then in 1953, the Shah took over and then embarked on some kind of reforms that led to the White Revolution in 1963 and created a lot of economic inequality and what Iranians called corruption. And in 1975, the Shah outlawed the other political parties and made Iran a one-party state. Up until this time, Iran was actually a secular state. But then when Ayatollah Khamenei went on exile and came back with increasing popularity because he was the most loudest and vocal opposition against the Shah's regime. And the Shah went on exile in 1978. In 1979, Ayatollah Khamenei came back and made Iran like an Islamic state. And, the Ayatollah came back and, implemented what he had accused the Shah of. He started using the SAVAK that was created by Israel with the help of Israel and the CIA, Mossad and the likes of them, and then created the Quds forces in the Iranian army, which is like the elite forces in the Iranian army called the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, the IRGC, and then started, funding Hezbollah and Hamas and proxy militant group against their enemies. And you've seen what Hezbollah and Hamas has done in the Middle East over the years. So this is where we're coming from. And back then, the fear that the US and the UK government had was that with the nationalization of the Anglo-Iranian oil company, that the oil and the oil sector in Iran was going to go into the control of Russia. And you've seen that play out again, because if you look at the strategic geopositioning, you see that the US government is working with Israel and is working with some forces in the EU and the UK to, restrict the amount of oil that goes to China. Iran today is doing about 3.2 million barrels of crude. Okay? They have more than 400 shadow fleet vessels because Iran is under sanctions. On the 16th of July 2015, Obama, after about 20 months of negotiation, facilitated the signing of what they call a P5+1 agreement. And interestingly, China and Russia were part of that P5 negotiations. Germany was the +1, plus the European Union that came with Germany, that said that Iran was going to stop enriching isotopes up to 70, 80, and that can form a nuclear bomb. And when Donald Trump won that, they rescinded on the P5+1 and they pulled out of that agreement, and we're back to square one. So you have a situation where you have Venezuela, Iran. Iran has been supplying a lot of naphtha and refined petroleum products to Venezuela because PDVSA cannot refine Venezuelan crude to supply the domestic demands of petroleum products in Venezuela. In turn, Venezuela gives Iran heavy crude and gold as payment in crude oil and commodity swap deals for that supply. Iran provides a lot of technical support for Russian oil and gas sector, both upstream and midstream. Iran exports crude oil to China. About 1.5 million barrels of crude oil is exported to China. And if you look at what happens in the Malaccan Straits, which is like a shipping channel through which crude oil goes from Malaysia to Indonesia and then China, where they do ship-to-ship transfer, STS, to mask the identity of the vessels and the country of origin of the crude to avoid US sanctions. You see that the US is trying to play a game where it can stop crude oil supply, cheap crude oil supply to China, and stop technical support that Iran provides to Russia, in a triangle that involves Venezuela, Iran, Russia, and China. Because for years that Iran has been under sanctions from the West, and it's not able to do any official bank transactions and bring its crude oil to the official markets, Russia and China has been a major source of support for taking its crude oil that gives it competitive advantage against other refiners around the world. So this is the cycle, and this is the historical antecedents. But what will typically happen over the next 24, 48 to 72 hours is that, number one, 20.7 million barrels of crude passes through the Straits of Hormuz. That Straits of Hormuz is like a tiny aperture that links the UAE and Oman on the two sides of the divide, and on the other side with Iran. And that crude oil comes from Saudi Arabia, it comes from Bahrain, it comes from the UAE, and it's going, about 84% is going to China and Southeast Asia. So if traders, when they wake up tomorrow morning, they see that the Iranian Revolutionary Guards and the SAVAK still has serious control over the government in Iran, despite the assassination of Ayatollah Khamenei, you're going to see that crude oil prices will jump. But OPEC says they have an emergency meeting in Vienna today by conference call, and they most likely are going to announce an increase in supply of 400,000 barrels per day to avoid any sharp spike. And you can also see that protection and indemnity insurance, which is like a PI indemnity insurance for companies who own shipping vessels and ship around the world, has announced that they are canceling contracts and they are increasing their premiums by another 50%.
Right.
Crude oil prices will go up. The implication for Nigeria is that the revenue accretion for the government is going to increase because the government benchmark for crude oil price is about around $64.85 per barrel for 2026 Appropriation Act. But on the other hand, if crude oil prices go up, the price of petroleum products will go up because we're now in a post-subsidy era, and any increase in the price of crude oil means that the refinery, for example, Dangote refinery, is going to have to revise its price based on its cracking margins on the realities we have on ground today.
Hey guys, you have heard it all. Who would have thought that a war raging in the far Middle East would have an economic impact on Nigeria and other countries? No wonder they say that the world is a global village. And I hope that they come to the resolution table so that this conflict can be resolved as fast as possible. And however, based on this analysis, it's obvious that there may be an increase in the price of crude oil in the world market, which will automatically affect the price of petrol here in Nigeria. And we all know that once there is an increase in the price of petrol, all goods and services are automatically affected. So guys, let us brace our mind for what is coming next. But one thing I know is that we in Nigeria, we have that survival instinct. that no matter how bad it is, we will always adjust. But we hope that it doesn't get bad more than what we are currently facing in this country, because a lot of people are actually passing through hell. So, and we hope that the price of goods and services don't skyrocket in a matter of days. So guys, what is your take? So whatever you think, please drop your thought in the comment section. And please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel, so that whenever we drop a new video, you'll be the first to receive the update. Thank you and God bless you.